back in 2015, I literally just started a blog called the Millennial Mindset, and it was the view of a younger generation towards work and what work meant. And I did a bit of research, and it was with over 350 millennials across a variety of UK businesses, big businesses. And the statistics were overwhelming. So 98% of all millennials wanted a career that aligned with their own values. So with such a massive number, I was sitting there saying, well, this is very clear. People want a values-based career. So then the next logical question is, well, if you want a career that aligns with your values, what are your values?
Welcome along to another edition of the Big Idea Show. Today, I am joined by Adam Henderson from Millennial Mindset. Adam, how is it going?
Very well, thank you.
Good. Thank you for joining me today.
No problem.
Cool. Right. Okay. So today, our discussion is around, is values-based careers realistic? And if so, how do we find them? So this is something I know that's very close to your heart. You do loads of work on this. So I'm going to let you dive straight in. And I guess tell us about it, you, and have you got a value-based career?
I have now, and part of my story is the fact that I've been working since 2008, so 11 years in the corporate world. And for me, I just felt as though I was a square peg in a round hole the entire time. And I quit my job in a big corporate world a couple of years ago and went out on my own because I wanted to test this idea of having a values-based career. And I thought it was possible. And I think it's possible for other people as well. So, I very much do a values-based career now.
What was it that you said you wanted to test it out, you wanted to try it? What was that spark that made you go, yes, this is possible and it's worth taking the risk? Because, like you said, if you come from a corporate environment, that's a huge risk and a huge thing to walk away from.
Yeah, and I went to university and I studied business, and I was very much a product of the business school. So they teach you about profit and loss and shareholder return and all that sort of stuff, which makes you very, very good at business. And when I started my career, I very much was that person. And I was very fortunate that there was lots of training in the corporate world like you normally get. And I got paired with a coach via this sort of senior top leadership program. And this coach was a sort of quasi business coach and life coach. And she asked some really powerful questions that made me really ask questions about the core of what I was doing and what was important and stuff like that. And it was that intervention. It was a year I had this coach, and she really made me reassess things like what was success, where was I heading, what was important, and it was that after that year that really sort of, and I got some mentoring during that time as well. And again, these captains of industry that spared their time to download their thoughts of 50, 60 years old, telling me the wisdoms of a career of a lifetime of wisdom. And they all said the same stuff. You're never going to be, regretful that you worked too much, that you worked too little. Sorry, on your deathbed. And it was, it just made me realize, what exactly does work mean? What does work mean for me? What does work mean for others? If you're going to spend 40 hours a week doing something, shouldn't it be something you actually enjoy rather than something that you endure? So that was it really. So it was the coaching, it was the reflection, it was the asking those big questions that really made me reassess and give me the confidence to say, I don't want to do this anymore. Much to the dismay of many of my friends, because it's like, what are you doing? You've got a great job, you've got loads of perks, the money's very good. And I decided to leave it all and go and move in with my parents and set up my own business and pursue my own path. Which some people still think is a bit crazy, but I'm enjoying it.
Yeah, definitely. And can you, I guess, to put you on the spot here, what's the core value at the heart of that for you?
So for me, there's several values I have. I think one that's sort of arisen over the last few years is freedom. In the corporate world, you are just a tiny cog, part of this, amazing machine, but this very big machine. Unless you spend an entire lifetime dedicating it to yourself, you're not going to be of really any influence within that business. So for me, having all these constraints of being at work at this time, working to this framework in this system with this process, using these tools, especially when I had a different view to say, I think this is a better way of doing things, or have you thought about this? Why are we still doing things like this? Because this was relevant 10 years ago, but it's not now.
Yeah.
And instead of being seen as someone that was adding value to the business, I was seen as an annoyance. Why do you keep asking these questions?
Yeah.
Shut up. You're young.
Yeah.
Know your place within the business. And I was just like, why do I want to go into an environment every day where I'm hamstrung by this old way of thinking, when actually I could go out and explore new ways of doing things, lead my own path, make my own mistakes.
Yeah.
And often corporates are very risk averse as well. So again, I really didn't like that. I didn't like this whole sort of constrained way of doing stuff. So for me, freedom was the biggest thing. But ironically, it's a value that I've then tested and gone away and explored myself, and I realise I don't like complete freedom.
Okay.
So I think the best thing for me is, in terms of a core value, is freedom within a framework.
Okay.
And I know that sounds very corporate, but it's allowing me freedom to explore stuff without leaving me completely without any point of direction or any sense of purpose. Otherwise, I will sit in front of the telly all day watching Catfish, and that's not good for anyone.
Yeah, because I guess I totally relate kind of what you're saying about freedom and this feeling that you can explore. And I think I'd probably say one of my values is this idea of the ability to explore, like an idea or a topic, or kind of always to be learning. But yeah, it kind of like you saying freedom within a framework. Kerwin Ray, I think, does a good video around freedom comes from discipline. In a way, because if you have complete freedom, you can do absolutely anything, and then there's no fulfillment and achievement of anything. So when you say framework, what sort of thing do you mean there for you?
Yeah, very much so. So it's not sort of like, get up by this time and do things, do this as a prescribed way, because if you do that, you lose the brilliance of serendipity, of falling across things or bumping into people that you never ever would have thought that you would have met. So for me, it's about, so one thing I do is every year I go away for a long weekend somewhere. So, the last few years I found an amazing little cottage via Airbnb in the middle of Wales, no telephone signal, and it's just where I go for a few days on my own to really reflect on the past year, what's happened. But then I also then make plans for the next year. So for me, that framework is, what are my ambitions over the next 12 months? What have I learned from the last 12 months? What am I inherently, like? What are my behaviours? What do I enjoy doing? What do I not enjoy doing? And then I say, well, in the next 12 months, based on that, I then want to achieve this. I want to do that, etc., etc. So, for me, that is a really important process and part of that sort of self-development, self-reflection, self-growth, without sounding too trite. But that provides that framework. So it sets a boundary as to what I need to achieve, but how I achieve that is completely up to me to explore and define and to give that freedom to pursue that goal.
Yeah. So I guess in that sense, is it the freedom and relating it back to this idea of finding your values, is it that the freedom to take the time to look? Because I guess a lot of the time companies will say, well, these are our values and we expect our employees to follow our values. Do you think, and is this something that you felt, that you go into a company and you feel like I have to follow their values and trying to, do you say a square peg in a round hole? It's like I'm trying to fit myself with their values rather than going, no, I need to find my own, and that freedom to take the time out and go, you know what, sometimes you're going to have to go through a lot of crap to get to find what's at the core of what you actually want to do.
Yeah, and I think the corporate world, in TEDxFolkestone there was a great talk by Paul Bressington that was talking about the notion of corporate values and what it meant and those brand documents. And I think many businesses do it because they feel as though they should do it, not because they really want to.
Yeah.
And a lot of these values are very trite. They're what they think they should be, but their behaviours often reflect something different. So what you end up getting within many of these businesses is a sort of a duality of character. You have the one that's, all the values written on the wall and in the nice, manicured documents that says how they think they should behave.
Yeah.
And then you then have the underlying culture within the business in terms of how they do behave. So what that says to employees, they sit there and go, well, we're being told this is how we should behave and this is what we stand for, but what I'm experiencing is this. And you get this disconnect in terms of what you're seeing and what you're experiencing. And that in itself is very stressful and causes people a lot of stress. And then to layer on top of that the individual's own personal values and drivers. Now, just imagine, an employee applies to work for a place because the values they've seen on their website is something that aligns to their values.
Yeah.
And then when they then get there, the experience is completely different. Imagine the how negative of an experience that is. So from the business's point of view, they've got someone where they're not going to work as hard because they're massively demotivated, they're massively disengaged, they feel slightly cheated.
Yeah.
They then might be a negative person within their business, which brings everyone else around them down as well. So, for me, defining your values is hugely important at a personal level, and probably even more important at a business level, to be authentic.
Yeah.
And to come up with real proper values that reflect what the organisation actually is like, not what they think they should be. And then in doing so, you're then going to get a better employee-employer fit.
Yeah.
And if you can get that fit as good as you can, the benefits to business, society and everything else should be better off the back of it.
Yeah, definitely. And I think in the next part, I want to come back to kind of the employee and how they can find their values. But just touching on what you mentioned there about the business finding their values, is it something that you said about this misalignment between what your values are on paper and then your actions not necessarily aligning to it? Should a company be going, right, these are our values, or I guess what's more realistic in terms of what's actually going to happen? These are our values. Okay, right, these are therefore the actions we're going to take. Or these are the causes we're going to support, whatever it may be? Or should it be, right, this is what I don't want to say what we naturally do, but let's kind of throw those the values out the window and look at what we actually do and then pull those from them. I guess it goes back to this idea of do you find out what you're doing naturally and then label it, or do you create the label and then go, right, this is how we have to behave?
Yeah, and I think, values exercises within organisations are often things like, let's do it every 5 years because that's what needs to be done.
Yeah.
It needs a refresh, or a new head of comes in and does it.
Yeah.
Rather than values should be a very iterative process, and your values will change. Just imagine, myself as an individual. My values when I was a teenager, a teenage boy at the age of 18, just going university, were completely different to my values as someone in my mid-20s, and they'll be completely different to what they are now as an entrepreneur, and their values will then be sort of, I wouldn't say completely different because of the amount of work I've done, but will have evolved when, for example, I become a parent, or, and those different life stages, your values should evolve. And I think it's exactly the same with a business. They should evolve, and they should be a reflection of the environment that they're operating in, but the way the business behaves, rather than a corporate exercise that's done every 5 years because they just need to do it. So behaviour should inform, it should be assessed to then determine the values, rather than sitting down going, what do we want our values to be, and see if we can aspire to be that. Yeah,
and I guess potentially putting in a framework that allows for evolution. I guess this is something that, similar to you in this personal journey of it, and I would always try and define, and you always want to know the answer, and I'll say that in kind of inverted commas. Everyone wants the answer. What should I be doing? What do I believe in? And the fact is, as you said, it's going to change, but we often don't allow ourselves that room to change, and therefore it's like we've made a decision and then we're going to stop learning, and that's ultimately doesn't work for an individual or for a business. But I wonder whether there are frameworks that allow evolution of not as kind of, I guess, maybe a little bit more than just saying, right, we're going to look at our corporate values every 6 months, maybe one step further, like I don't know, every day, or some kind of exercise. But I don't know, I'm throwing it out there, but maybe there's someone out there doing it, or something that could become something.
Well, I don't think you necessarily need a framework. I think it just needs to if you make a conscious decision that values are important to yourself or as a business, it's something you've got to spend time on. That really old cliche, grass only grows where you water it. It's exactly the same with this. So I don't think you necessarily need a framework. You need to draw a line in the sand and say, right, these are my 6 values. This is our company's vision, mission, purpose, whatever you want to include within that framework. And then you then go off and do business, or you live your life in my case. And then you then say, right, when this situation came up and I was met with this problem or met with this situation, how did I inherently behave?
Yeah.
Was that in keeping with those values? And then you need to make a decision and say, right, this value is either incorrect and we need to change the value to reflect the way we actually do behave, or you need to say, actually, the way we behaved was wrong. We shouldn't have behaved like that because our values are this. What do we now need to do and put into place to make sure that the behaviour changes? So that's, again, the culture change piece, but there is a behavioural change that needs to be done in order to make sure that value is realised.
Yeah.
And it just needs the organisation to be honest with itself, to ask those questions and to be reflective, rather than, I think, a really, arduous framework to follow.
Yeah, constant loop of feedback and improvement. Yeah. Absolutely. Okay, Adam, we're going to take a quick break here and we'll be back in a little bit. Welcome back. Part 2 of the Big Ideas Show. Today we are talking, is a values-based career realistic? And if so, how do we find it? How do we find our values? Adam Henderson is here with me from Millennial Mindset, and you've been talking, haven't you, about how you found your values, why it's so important to you, but very much you've kind of decided to take this to the next level and kind of strike out on your own, start your own business. So how do people maybe apply what we're talking about, but still working for someone else, being an employee?
Yeah, so let's just rewind where how I got into this whole thing of looking at values was back in 2015, I literally just started a blog called The Millennial Mindset, and it was the view of a younger generation towards work and what work meant. And I did a bit of research, and it was with over 350 millennials across a variety of UK businesses, big businesses. And the statistics were overwhelming. So 98% of all millennials wanted a career that aligned with their own values. So with such a massive number, I was sitting there saying, well, this is very clear. People want a values-based career. So then the next logical question is, well, if you want a career that aligns with your values, what are your values?
Yeah.
And then I went and asked as many people as possible, because I'm quite a curious individual. And what I realised was many people didn't really know. And then if you did ask them to sort of dig deep and explore what they were, they come back with the sort of same things. It's honesty, authenticity, integrity, which they may be for some. Yeah. But very, very much people had this view that they, I think they've been slightly brainwashed by the ones they see in the corporate world, and they've echoed them. Yeah. But, they don't necessarily have to be positive. They can be quite, varied. So I then started to explore this whole idea of how do you define what your values are? Because if a values-based career is really important, if you don't know what your values are, then it's a pointless exercise. You can't have a values-based career. So that's led me down a bit of a sort of rabbit hole over the last sort of 2 to 3 years, working with a variety of different people and businesses and exploring lots of stuff and writing a lot about it to try and find out, find a decent way for people to find out what their values are. And you don't, have to do this exercise and go out on your own and run your own business. I decided to do that because, let's face it, the majority of people will still want to work within a bigger organisation. Yeah. So how do you then help people find out what their values are, and then allow them to, once they've got them, to then say, am I a good fit within this organisation? And the beauty of it as well is that there are some specialist recruiters popping up online. There's one called Talent Rocket and several others, where you take a test and they help you define what your values are. Yeah. And then they've done the same test with the organisations they have listed on their site. Okay. So then what they'll do is they'll pair you with the organisations that have the same values as you first. Yeah. So they'll only then show you the jobs in your specific skill set, based only in the businesses that align with your values. Yeah. So that's one way to do it, online tools and all this sort of stuff. And then there's been various different ways in which I've done it. There's been coaching, and there's other exercises that I've done as well. Okay. So I guess it sounds like a little bit, like you're saying, these online tests and businesses doing it. Does it is it another form? Is values and kind of the whole millennials and things like that, is it like the new Myers-Briggs and all those sorts of tests that kind of were a big thing, and are still a big thing I don't work in a corporate environment, but I imagine it's still a big thing. Is this the next step of that, or is it different? Is it deeper? Is it more? I don't know. Good question. I mean, there's always, the latest thing, particularly in the corporate world, the latest buzzword, the latest tool, the latest thing. Myers-Briggs has been a darling of recruitment for years, and it has its strengths and it has its weaknesses. But let's be clear up front. What are our values? What do we mean by values? And even if you did a quick Google search now, you'd get 15 different interpretations of what it is. For me, it's put very simply. Values are are things that are principles, core principles that are important to you as an individual in terms of how you want to live your life and in turn how you want to work.
Yeah.
So defining what these core principles are, they are separate to like the Myers-Briggs, which looks at your personality and, your drivers and stuff like that. These are inherent principles that you want to live your life by.
Yeah.
So I don't know whether it's going to be the next buzz thing, the next cool kid on the block with regards to the corporate world. All I know, there is a demand from the younger generation to have a career that is based on values.
Yeah.
And they want to have a career that does align with these core principles, i.e. their values. So if people can utilise different tools in order to facilitate that, then why not?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I mean, hearing you talk kind of there, it's making, I guess, to differentiate the two, it's making me think, is things like Myers-Briggs and, like you said, personality, is that maybe looking in the past at this is how our behaviour and habits up until now have created who we are, whereas values are maybe more future focused and they are likely to be similar along the same lines, but I guess a value you can choose. You can go, right, you know what? One of my values was to be relaxed, always chill out. And as a result, you can be a bit lazy and kind of using the gym example for something. But then you can wake up one day and you go, you know what? I'm going to change my values. And my value from now on is this. And aligned with that, I'm going to go to the gym or change my diet or read every day. Is that maybe values are a choice and we'll only make a choice aligned probably with something that's happened in the past and where we are, and like you said earlier about evolving, but it's something you can consciously align yourself with every day and to kind of better yourself, as you were saying, right, these are my values and is my actions aligned with that, yes or no? Okay, right, I need to change my actions to align myself more with that.
Yeah, and this is a classic, example of sort of nature versus nurture and stuff like that. Some people would argue that your personality is fixed, and others would argue that your personality can change.
Yeah.
I'm not going to go into the science of it and all the different debates around it. I'll let people make their own decisions. But you are right. I think values can evolve and they can change. But importantly, if we make the assumption that personality is relatively fixed, you have got an element of flex within that. Values, I think, very much are dynamic and they will evolve with you as you grow and as you develop. So I think there's an element of it where, to the example I gave earlier about a business, whether they need to change their values to reflect their behaviour or they need to change their behaviour to reflect their values. I think you've got that elasticity to do that. So I think values are very, very important, and they can be aspirational in terms of this is what I think my values should be, and this is what I want to aspire to be. But then you've got to do a lot of self-work to make sure that your behaviour reflects that. Or conversely, if you don't want to make all that effort and that change to change the way you fundamentally behave and the way you do things, then you need to make sure that your values reflect that.
Yeah.
Either way, it's all about being authentic. So it's changing your behaviour to match your values or changing your values to match your behaviour. You choose which one is right for you.
Yeah, and both, as you said, both are okay. Yeah. You can, like you said, values don't always have to be, I want to change the world and be amazing, and it can just be to live a good quality of life doing whatever I'm doing. It don't have to be the most successful person in the world and still lead a good life, do good within your own community, right? Okay, so this is kind of, I guess, it's really good to define this, I guess, as values, but how can people, if they want to start looking for their own value, besides, as you said earlier, kind of going off to some remote place with no Wi-Fi and kind of sitting and pondering it, how can they get started on a kind of right now almost defining it for themselves, or just to look? maybe start. That's the first place, really.
So I believe the best things are the simplest things, and I don't know if this exists out there already. I haven't come across it, but it's a tool that I've used in what I do with my work, but it's something that I used myself as a guinea pig first. So just think about yourself. You could be great at giving relationship advice to somebody else, but when it comes to your own relationships, you may be terrible, and that's an inherent theme a lot of the time. Certainly the case with me. So from my perspective, the key problem about identifying your values is that you're too close to it.
Okay.
You're in it.
Yeah.
So what I've developed is something that you remove yourself from the situation. So I'm a huge film buff. I love movies, but it can work the same for video, for books, for any other celebrities or stars or whatever. So all I do is literally draw 5 boxes on the left hand side, and you can either cut out pictures of your favorite celebrities or your favorite movie character, anything like that, and literally put a little picture in there, and then to the right of it have a small description box and say what is it about that person that you absolutely admire. You'd love to be like them. It's their behavior, everything about them. You watch them on screen, you think, I'd love to be that person. And then when you do that several times with say 5, maybe 7, 8 different characters, and then review what you've written, you'll start to see a pattern of things that keep turning up and keep emerging. And for me, doing that, removing myself from that situation and thinking about other people objectively, made it very clear what my values are. So to let you into mine, when I first ever did this exercise, so movies, it went from Mufasa from The Lion King to Coach Carter in the film there, the guy who Will Smith played in The Pursuit of Happiness, his character, all these really strong, Leonidas from 300, a very inspirational leader, and put others before himself. All this other stuff, I really get me really ignited when I watch the film. I think, that's So for me, they were the foundations of what my values then became. And what was then important. And then once you've done that exercise, then you can then start internalizing them. So again, another analogy I like to do is to say that the values are the combination of your values make up your character. So to think of that as analogy is it's a bit like clothes. Your clothes, you wear an individual top, that won't mean anything, but the combination of those different clothes will make up your own personal style. And your style will be unique to you and will be different from somebody else's. But importantly, a top that may suit you may not suit somebody else. So what it's about is about using exercises such as this, and there's many more out there, to define maybe a list of say 10 values that you think are reflective of you. And then you then try them on, a bit like clothes. You try on these values. And what I mean by that is when you are presented with certain situations, you then will behave in a certain way. So that's a way of testing yourself and trying on that value and actually go, let me try on this value and I'm going to behave this way in this situation. And if that feels completely alien and terrible, that value's not right for you. But actually, if you're met with that situation and you think about it, you pause and you apply that value and you go, actually, no, this feels right. I feel much more comfortable with the decision I've now made. It's probably a very good sign that value is inherent to you and is intrinsically important to you and is a real true value. So I think that's the process. So remove yourself from the situation, think about others, identify a core set of say 10 values, and then try them on, and the combination of those values will make your character, just like the combination of clothes will make your style. And that's why reflection is important every year, to not do it too much, to just go back and look at it. And again, just like a person, their clothing style will change over time. From cool clothes in your teens to cardigans in your 50s, it'll be exactly the same with values as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Adam, some great stuff, some great tips there, and hopefully there'll be lots of people cutting out celebrities out of their out of their magazines. I tell you another one that I find, like a really, really simple one that I always find, I guess, kind of funny to look at, is to get people to go, well, what's on your Facebook page or not your news feed because that's your friends, but on your personal profile. Because we only tend to share certain things, right, that we think reflect us or what we want to portray. So I was quite like that. What do I share? And that tells me about me. Sometimes it's a little bit. It's only surface level, I think, that one. But it's quite a funny one, maybe, as well. Right, we're going to take another break. We'll be back in a little bit. Welcome back. Part 3. Is a value-based career realistic? So Adam, you were telling us how we can find our values as ultimately the first thing, because you can't have a value-based career if you don't know what they are in the first place. So we've got them. How do we then apply this to our career? Particularly, I guess, if we're working for someone else, finding that job that aligns with our values. And likewise, if maybe there's a small business or a large business owner out there, how do they kind of find the people that work for them that match up?
Yeah, so I've done this exercise several times with many times with lots of different people. And what's really interesting is that there's normally 3 outcomes when you do this thought and you look at your values. One is people realize what their values are and they then go, I'm completely in the wrong job. What the hell am I doing? I now know why I've been miserable for so long. Yeah. You've got other people that go, yeah, I'm in a job that absolutely aligns with my values, and what that does, it gives them a renewed sense of sort of drive and motivation to go, I know I'm now going to be here for the next few years. I'm really going to knuckle down. This is where I need to be. Yeah. This is where I should be, and this all works. And then the third one are the ones that go, I've got me 10, but I can't quite whittle them down to a 5. I think I'm going to need some time to go and reflect this. So I'll carry on what I'm doing now. But what I might do is I might do a charity job on the side. Okay. I might take up a new hobby. So what they'll do is they'll go on, to my analogy earlier, they'll go and try on these different values over the course of the year and experiment while still in their current job. Okay. And they'll end up invariably where those first 2 groups are at the end of that year. We'll find out where they are. But once you do know what your values are, as I said, if they are aligned with where you work, then fantastic. And the beauty of that is that if businesses are very receptive to have a values-based culture and understand what their individual employees' values are, they can use that to their advantage, because they can sit there and say, right, rather than at the annual review time giving someone a generic bonus of however many 0.5% if you're lucky enough to get that. They could sit there and say, right, Adam's values are this, say for example freedom. So actually, rather than giving him an extra £500 on his paycheck every year, I'm going to say to him, you can have an extra 2 days holiday per year, because that is much more of value to you than say Lucy in another team where her stuff is all about security or something to do with that. So I think having that understanding from an employer perspective is really important. And then once you've then got all that information of your different employees and what their values are, you can then sit there and say, who are the sort of top performers, which are the really high performing teams? Is there a blend of values within those teams that really work and really excel? And then you can then use that in your selection process and say, actually, I'm not just going to look at the fact, have you been to university? Have you had 5 years in this degree? That in this discipline, you could almost use that as a secondary filter and say, actually, I'm going to do some sort of some sort of test first, or even just have a coffee with them and understand that person's individual drivers to say, actually, I think that person's going to be a good fit here. They do have these sorts of values. And once you realise you've got someone that has values that align with the business or with the blend of values that works well within your team, almost the secondary bit in terms of the skill set, you can train them on that. You can't train really someone to change their values overnight, but you can train them quite quickly to skill themselves up. Okay. Yeah. So for me, values, once you understand them, it's a really powerful thing from an employer's perspective. And then flipping it back to an employee's perspective, if you found you're in a place that aligns with your values, great, knuckle down, work hard, and really throw yourself into it because you know you're in the right place. But if you find yourself in a place where you're not, there is an absolute mismatch between what you're doing. My advice is don't quit and then suddenly, become homeless and live on the streets and stuff like that and just, say, I did it because I wanted to have a values-based career. Not at all. It's about sitting there saying, right, where do I need to head? Where can I go? What do I need to do? So then it's about trying to find businesses that at least demonstrate those values. And I wouldn't just go for businesses, do a quick Google search, businesses with values in X. Because as we've said at the start, is a lot of businesses say certain values but don't actually behave like them. But there's so much information out there, like Glassdoor and all these other websites and stuff that tell you what it's really like to work in an organisation. Do your homework and actually come up with a short list and say, these are the 5 businesses that I really want to work for. I've researched them. They genuinely do behave in this way. They do have, this value set, and that's how I proactively want to target. And you may not get a job there within the next couple of months, but it could be something that you set up alerts for. It could be something that maybe there's a certain discipline that they have that you don't have on your CV at the minute, so you might want to do an internal change within your business to then be ready for the next move. But another important thing about understanding your values is it acts like a lens with which to look through that provides much more clarity on your future decision making that you would have had before that. So again, give another example where you've realized that your values are a bit of a mismatch, but suddenly your boss comes to you and go, we're going to give you a promotion, here's an extra £5,000. Now instinctively you'll go, well, yeah, I'll take that. But actually, if you know what your values are and this job is even further away from them, rather than making the often rational choice of saying, yes, I'll take that job for the extra £5,000, thank you very much, you instead use this understanding of your values as a lens and say, actually, no, I'm not going to take that on this occasion. I'm going to go and seek a job elsewhere or look at something different. And that will, in the long term, get me closer to where I need to be, rather than in the short term making relatively what would seem rational decisions, but in the long term are actually getting you further and further away from where you need to be and where you should be.
So I guess it sounds like a lot of the time, and I completely kind of get that idea of it's not necessarily the destination, it's kind of setting up yourself on that journey of, okay, now I know what my values are, I know what I want to achieve, I know the sort of place, and going, it's not going to happen overnight, but I can actively be pursuing it in some of those examples that you said, which the process, if the way you do that and doing that is one of your values, which I assume it probably would be for you to go out and do it, would mean you're going to be feeling good anyway. You may not be in that right job, but the fact you know where you are heading is the feel good and the positive thing, right? I guess it's like people say about it's not the destination, it's the journey. And if you know you're in pursuit, like, I don't know, I think of personal examples like having a hard task ahead or knowing I've got a tough journey is not as hard as not having a clue where I'm going. That kind of sense of being lost, right? And I guess that's where values give you that pointer. I think you said it, didn't you? It gives you that lens or that marker in which that's the direction, a compass. It's tiny little degrees of movement, one way or another, can send you in a whole different direction.
And that is very true, but it also informs other things as well, because values are just important to your life as they are in work. My viewpoint is, if you're going to spend 40 hours a week working somewhere, shouldn't it be in something that you enjoy? That is part of you, because it will become part of you. So from my perspective, I think knowing your values allows you to, and trying them on allows you to explore different things outside of the work environment. So you might sign up to a whole load of podcasts, for example, that you never would have even thought about before because that value hadn't even been on your radar. Or you might find a new hobby, or you might find you go on meetup.com, or you might join a political party that you never thought about and just get involved in some of the debates. But what it does, it just sets, it's like before you didn't even have a map as to where you needed to be. Now you still don't know the final destination of where it is you need to go, but you've just been given, the first 5 steps. And you're now on that journey of exploring it and defining it and testing it and seeing what's what. So again, I think it's doing it is not just for work. It's overall for your way of life and the way of living. And it just really helps you think about and focus your attentions in this very busy world where there's so much content, there's so much going on. It's just as important to say no to stuff as it is to say yes. But this gives you a sort of a method to say yes to the right things and test those things out.
Absolutely. Okay, so to draw it all to a close, our question was, is a value-based career realistic? I think from this discussion, I'd very much say yes.
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, yes, a values-based career is 100% realistic, providing you know what your values are.
Yeah.
And this is the gap at the minute, is that there's a lot of idealistic people that want a values-based career but don't know what their values really are. If you can do that, and it will require a lot of self-work, a lot of self-development, and I think if there's enough people that get on this bandwagon and do it properly, businesses will then follow suit, because they'll realise that the majority of their workforce only work in this way, and if they don't get on board with this way of operating, then they're not going to get the best talent, they're not going to be as competitive, and ultimately, you know, they risk going out of business. So I think that this is the next big thing, this is the next phase that's going on, and I just think it needs to be done in a proper way, not use too much flowery language with no substance behind it. I think you know, it does serve a real purpose for business and for individuals. And if you can get it right and identify those values, employees can have values-based careers, and businesses can have a much more of a values-based way of working, which ultimately I think will be better for everyone.
Absolutely. Adam, it's been awesome chatting. Where can people find out more info about you or the stuff you're doing? I know you write loads. Yep. If people want to read more about this topic and kind of your ideas, where can they find out?
Yeah, so the main website is millennialmindset.co.uk. I'm on Twitter, which is at Gen Y Mindset, and I'm very active on LinkedIn as well. So search for Adam Henderson on LinkedIn. It's a popular name, but I should pop up on there. So
Millennial Mindset, that's the thing to search, right?
Definitely.
Adam, thank you very much indeed. It's been awesome. Thank you.
Cheers.
So a massive thank you for tuning in for another week of the Big Ideas Show, and an even bigger thank you to Adam Henderson from Millennial Mindset. A really interesting chat there, and one that's kind of really close to my heart. I've personally spent a lot of time looking at my values. A lot of stuff that Adam was talking about I really relate to, so I definitely recommend it as something that's worth taking the time. But also, don't beat yourself up that it's going to happen overnight, because it never does. It takes a number of years to even just get kind of a solid foundation there, and then this is a lifelong journey. But as we were saying at the end there, one that really is worth going on, and it's the journey that's the fun bit, not necessarily the destination. So hopefully take up some of the tips there that Adam suggested, and a big thank you to finish to our sponsors, of course. We have QBH Solutions, HR and compliance support that doesn't have to be rocket science, making it simple and easy to understand. We have Meticulous Media, B2B content providers working in a number of industries to help you tell your story, and ultimately, like we've been chatting about today, to share your values through your content and through your story. We have Go Monkey, the web app for parents and grandparents to get out and about, do more, see more with their little ones, the app that grows up with your family. So check them out. And finally, we have Bullfish Glass Services. They are bespoke glass manufacturers based right here in Folkestone, super high quality, bringing you everything bespoke you need to get the perfect interior design or construction glass fitting. So, and finally, to finish, massive thank you to all you out there for listening, for tuning in every week. Please like, share, comment. We really want to hear your feedback, because everything we hear, all your support, really does help inspire us to keep producing more content, and more content that you want as well. Tell us what you like, and we're definitely here to listen. So I hope you're having a good day, a good evening, whatever you're up to, and I'll hopefully see you again next week.